The hum of Flight 447's engines filled the first-class cabin as 17-year-old Zara Johnson settled into seat 3A, her NASA Youth Summit acceptance letter tucked carefully in her backpack beside a worn copy of Packing for Mars. Captain Richard Smith emerged from the cockpit for his routine cabin inspection, silver hair catching the overhead lights as his gaze swept methodically across passengers until it stopped, locked onto the young black girl reading quietly by the window. His jaw tightened as he took in her presence in the premium section, assumptions forming behind his narrowed eyes. "Excuse me, young lady." His voice carried across the hushed cabin with unmistakable authority. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Zara looked up from her book with a polite smile, handing over the document without hesitation. But something flickered in her calm expression when he studied it far longer than necessary. "And who purchased this ticket for you?" The question hung in the air like an accusation, drawing curious stares from nearby passengers. What Smith couldn't see was the small black leather folder in Zara's carry-on, or know about the phone number she had memorized for exactly this type of situation. He didn't understand that her unnatural composure came from years of preparation, or that her father had taught her. Patience was essential in space missions. Smith and his crew had chosen the wrong teenage passenger to underestimate, and they were about to discover that sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who look like they don't belong there. Before we dive back in, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, be sure to subscribe as tomorrow's special episode is something you won't want to miss. Smith's expression hardens as he examines the boarding pass again, as if searching for some invisible flaw. "Flight attendant," he calls sharply, never taking his eyes off Zara. Karen Mitchell hurries over, her practiced smile wavering when she sees the captain's stern expression. She's worked these routes for 15 years, knows exactly what that look means. "Check this passenger's documentation," Smith orders. "Make sure everything is in order." Zara closes her book slowly, marking her place with deliberate calm. "My ticket was purchased 3 weeks ago through the airline's website. I have the confirmation email if you need it." "That's not the issue," Smith says, his voice dropping to what he probably thinks is a reasonable tone. "It's about appropriate seating arrangements. These seats are reserved for passengers who typically fly this class." The words land like a slap. Around them, conversations die. Passengers crane their necks to see what's happening. A businessman in 2C lowers his newspaper. The elderly woman in 4A stops knitting. "I paid full price for this seat," Zara says, her voice steady but something cold creeping into her eyes. $847, to be exact. Karen steps closer, her voice artificially sweet. "Sweetie, I think there might be some confusion. The economy section has lovely seats too, and they'd be much more comfortable for someone like you. Someone like you." The phrase echoes through the cabin. Several passengers shift uncomfortably. A few pull out their phones. Zara stands slowly, her movements controlled and precise. She reaches into her carry-on and pulls out a small black leather folder. Her fingers trace its edges as she looks at both airline employees. "I need to make a phone call," she says quietly. "Miss, we're preparing for takeoff." Smith protests. "You need to take your assigned seat or leave the aircraft." "My assigned seat is 3A. Zara replies, pulling out her phone. "And I'm going to call my father now." She dials a number from memory. The phone rings once. "Dad? It's Zara. We have a situation on Flight 447. Her voice is unnaturally calm, the kind of calm that comes before storms. "The captain thinks I'm sitting in the wrong seat." She listens for a moment, then nods. "Gate B12. Yes, sir. I'll wait." Smith crosses his arms. "I don't know who your father is, young lady, but this is my aircraft, and I decide who sits where." Zara ends the call and sits back down, placing the black folder on her tray table. "He'll be here in a few minutes. Nobody's coming to save you." Smith snorts. Security will escort you off this plane if necessary. The elderly woman in 4A speaks up suddenly. Captain, what exactly is the problem here? The girl has a valid ticket. Ma'am, please don't interfere. Karen says quickly. This is an airline matter. This is a human decency matter. The woman retorts, her knitting needles clicking sharply. Smith ignores her, pulling out his radio. Ground control. This is Captain Smith on Flight 447. I need airport security to gate B12. We have an uncooperative passenger situation. Zara opens her book again, but her eyes aren't reading. They're watching, calculating. The black folder sits beside her like a promise. My father always says patience is essential in space missions. She says to no one in particular. The right moment always comes if you wait for it. The businessman in 2C frowns. Space missions? Zara's lips curve in the faintest smile. He also says that the most important discoveries happen when you look beyond the surface of things. Smith's radio crackles. Security is en route, Captain. Good, Smith says, but something in Zara's expression makes him uncomfortable. There's no fear there, no desperation, just waiting. Karen attempts damage control, addressing the other first-class passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll have this sorted out quickly. What exactly needs sorting? Asks the businessman. The girl has a ticket. It's complicated, Karen says weakly. No, Zara says, still looking at her book. It's really not complicated at all. 2 security officers appear at the aircraft door. Smith waves them over triumphantly. Officers, we need this passenger removed. She's refusing to comply with seating arrangements. The lead officer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looks at Zara uncertainly. Miss, can you come with us, please? Zara looks up from her book. I'd prefer to wait for my father, if that's all right. He should be here any moment. There's no father coming? Smith says impatiently. Remove her now. The security officer hesitates. Something about the girl's composure strikes him as odd. She's not acting like someone who's been caught in a lie. What's your name, miss? He asks gently. Zara Johnson, she replies. And you are? Officer Williams. Zara, if you could just step outside with us, we can sort this all out. Zara considers this, then shakes her head. I think I'll wait right here if you don't mind. My father specifically said to stay put. Your father can meet us outside. Smith insists. Actually, Zara says, glancing at her watch, he's probably coming up the jetway right now. As if summoned by her words, footsteps echo from the aircraft entrance. Heavy, purposeful steps that somehow command attention even before their owner appears. Smith turns toward the sound, irritation written across his face. Security, remove this girl immediately. But Officer Williams is staring at the entrance, his expression shifting from confusion to something approaching recognition. Miss Johnson, he says slowly, your father wouldn't happen to be... The footsteps grow closer. Zara's smile widens just slightly. Here he comes, she says softly. The footsteps stop at the aircraft entrance. A voice, deep and authoritative, speaks to someone outside the plane. Words are exchanged in low tones, too quiet for the passengers to hear, but the quality of the voice carries, measured, accustomed to command. Smith straightens his shoulders, preparing for whatever parent is about to board his aircraft to argue for their entitled child. He's dealt with helicopter parents before. Money talks, but Captain's authority walks. Officer Williams, Smith says sharply. I don't care who this girl's father is. She needs to be removed from first class immediately. Williams holds up a hand, listening to something on his radio. His face pales slightly. Captain, maybe we should wait just a moment. Wait for what? Smith demands. This is my aircraft. a new voice cuts through the tension. "Officer Williams, is there a problem here?" The voice belongs to a tall, distinguished black man in his 50s. He wears a simple polo shirt and jeans, but there's something about his bearing that immediately changes the atmosphere in the cabin. Behind him, two other men in similar casual attire wait patiently. But it's not his presence that makes Smith's confident expression falter. It's the navy blue jacket the man carries over his arm. The distinctive red, white, and blue NASA logo catches the cabin lights like a beacon. "Dr. Johnson?" Williams says, his voice carrying a note of respect that wasn't there moments before. Smith's mouth opens, then closes. His eyes dart from the NASA jacket to Zara's calm face, pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking together in his mind. "Dad?" Zara says simply, standing to greet her father with a hug. Dr. Marcus Johnson embraces his daughter, his eyes taking in the scene over her shoulder. The security officers, the flight crew, the passengers all staring. His expression remains neutral, but there's steel beneath the surface. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" he asks, his voice gentle but carrying clearly through the cabin. "Captain Smith seems to think I'm sitting in the wrong seat," Zara explains, her tone conversational. Dr. Johnson's gaze shifts to Smith, who suddenly looks much smaller than he did moments before. "Captain Smith, is it? I believe we've met before." Smith's face drains of color. "Dr. Johnson, I didn't realize—" "You didn't realize what, Captain?" The question is asked mildly, but everyone in the cabin can hear the edge underneath. "That my daughter has the right to sit in the seat she paid for?" Karen Mitchell steps forward, attempting damage control. "Dr. Johnson, sir, there was just some confusion about the seating arrangements. I'm sure we can work this out." "Confusion?" Dr. Johnson repeats, finally putting on his NASA jacket. The logo seems to glow under the cabin lights. What exactly was confusing about a 17-year-old girl sitting in the seat listed on her boarding pass? One of the men who entered with Dr. Johnson steps forward. He wears a suit now visible beneath his casual jacket and carries a briefcase. "Captain Smith, I'm David Chen, Dr. Johnson's attorney. We've been monitoring this situation." Smith's hands begin to shake slightly. "Monitoring?" "Dr. Johnson called me when his daughter contacted him." Chen explains. "We've been listening to the entire exchange through her phone." The businessman in 2C suddenly looks up from his phone. "Wait a minute, Dr. Marcus Johnson, the mission director for the Mars program?" Dr. Johnson doesn't acknowledge the question, his attention focused entirely on Captain Smith. "Captain, would you like to explain to me why you felt it necessary to call security on my daughter?" "Sir, there was a misunderstanding about what?" Dr. Johnson's voice remains level, but the question cuts like a laser. "Please, Captain, I'm genuinely curious about what you thought you understood." Smith looks around desperately, as if seeking escape routes. Karen tries to help. "Dr. Johnson, we were just ensuring that all passengers were properly seated according to what policy?" Chen interrupts, pulling out a tablet. "I have the airline's complete passenger rights documentation here. Could you point to the section that allows crew members to challenge passengers' seating based on their appearance?" The cabin falls silent, except for the hum of the aircraft systems. Passengers are recording now, phones pointed at the unfolding scene. The elderly woman in 4A has stopped pretending to knit and is watching with fascination. "Furthermore," Chen continues, "I should mention that Dr. Johnson here is not just any NASA employee. He's the mission director for the Mars Exploration Program, recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and advisor to 3 presidents on space policy." Zara speaks for the first time since her father arrived. "Dad, you don't need to list your credentials. The issue isn't who you are." Dr. Johnson looks at his daughter with obvious pride. "You're absolutely right, Zara. The issue is who you are. a young woman who earned her seat at the NASA Youth Summit by designing a revolutionary Mars habitat system at age 16. Gasps ripple through the cabin. The businessman leans forward. She's the kid who won the national space competition. She's also. Dr. Johnson continues, his voice growing stronger. My daughter. And she was humiliated and threatened with removal from this aircraft for no reason other than the color of her skin. Smith finally finds his voice. Dr. Johnson, I had no idea who she was. That's exactly the problem, Captain. Dr. Johnson replies, you didn't need to know who she was. You needed to treat her with basic human dignity. Officer Williams clears his throat. Captain Smith, perhaps we should discuss this outside. No, Dr. Johnson says firmly. I think this discussion needs to happen right here, in front of everyone who witnessed my daughter's treatment. He turns to address the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disturbance. My daughter was traveling to Houston to attend a NASA Youth Summit, where she'll be presenting her research on sustainable life support systems for Mars exploration. The elderly woman begins clapping. Within seconds, most of the cabin joins her. Smith slumps against the bulkhead, the weight of his mistake finally sinking in. Chen pulls out his phone. Captain, I'm calling your airline's CEO now. This conversation is going to happen at the highest level. Please, Smith whispers. I have a family. Zara steps forward. So do I, Captain Smith. Did you think about that when you decided I didn't belong in first class? The question hangs in the air like an accusation. Dr. Johnson puts his hand on his daughter's shoulder. What happens next, Captain Smith, depends entirely on how you choose to handle this moment. Dr. Johnson's phone buzzes. He glances at it, then shows the screen to Chen, who nods grimly. The attorney steps forward, addressing Captain Smith directly. Captain, that was the airline's CEO. He's been briefed on the situation and is personally flying in from Dallas. He'll be here within 2 hours. Smith's legs nearly give out. He grabs the nearest seat back for support. The CEO is coming here. James Morrison, yes. Chen confirms. Dr. Johnson has worked with him on several government aerospace contracts. They know each other quite well. The color drains completely from Karen's face. She recognizes the name. Everyone in the airline industry knows James Morrison's reputation for swift, decisive action when the company's reputation is at stake. Dr. Johnson addresses the cabin calmly. Ladies and gentlemen, I know this is unusual, but I hope you'll bear with us for a few more minutes. What happened here today is bigger than just one incident. He turns back to Smith. Captain, do you know what my daughter was doing when you approached her? Smith shakes his head mutely. She was reading about Mars mission logistics. Dr. Johnson continues. Zara has been accepted into NASA's youngest ever intern program. At 17, she's designed life support systems that our engineers are seriously considering for the first Mars colony. The businessman in 2C puts down his phone. I've been reading about her online. She's all over the space industry news, the Mars habitat prodigy, they're calling her. Zara blushes slightly. The media likes dramatic headlines. The media likes extraordinary achievements. Her father corrects gently. And what you've accomplished is extraordinary. Chen pulls out his tablet again. Captain Smith, I'm looking at your employment record. 15 years with the airline, generally good performance reviews. No previous incidents of discrimination on file. Smith looks hopeful for a moment, which makes this particularly puzzling. Chen continues. What exactly made you assume that a well-dressed, polite teenager with a valid first-class ticket didn't belong in first class? The question lands like a physical blow. Smith opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. No words come. Officer Williams steps forward uncomfortably. Dr. Johnson, what would you like us to do here? I'd like you to do your job, officer. Dr. Johnson replies. Investigate whether any laws were broken today. Laws? Smith stammers. Chen nods. Federal aviation regulations prohibit discrimination against passengers based on race, among other protected characteristics. What happened here today could constitute a civil rights violation. Karen finally speaks up, her voice shaking. Dr. Johnson, surely we can resolve this without involving… nobody meant any harm. Nobody meant any harm? Dr. Johnson's voice rises for the first time. Ms. Mitchell, you told my daughter that first-class seats were for people like her to be more comfortable in economy. You suggested she didn't belong in the seat she purchased. What exactly did you mean by that? Karen's mouth works silently. Around the cabin, passengers are recording everything, their phones capturing every word. The elderly woman in 4A suddenly speaks up. I've been flying for 40 years, and I've never seen anything like this. That child was sitting quietly, reading a book, bothering no one. Ma'am, could you state your name for the record? Chen asks, pulling out a digital recorder. Eleanor Patterson. I'm a retired federal judge, she says, her voice carrying new authority. And what I witnessed here today was textbook discrimination. Smith looks like he might faint. A federal judge as a witness is the last thing he needed. Dr. Johnson's phone rings. He answers it immediately. Dr. Johnson. Yes, Jim, I'm still on the aircraft. She's fine, thank you for asking. No, I think this needs to be handled publicly. Exactly. The whole industry needs to see this. He hangs up and addresses Smith directly. That was your CEO, Captain. He's asked me to stay on this aircraft until he arrives. He wants to handle this personally. Smith slides down the bulkhead until he's sitting on the floor. My career is over. That, Dr. Johnson says quietly, was your choice, Captain. Every action you took today was a choice. Zara kneels down beside Smith, her voice gentle. Captain Smith, can I ask you something? He looks up at her with desperate eyes. Do you have children? She asks. He nods. 2 daughters, 15 and 13. What would you want to happen if someone treated them the way you treated me today? The question breaks something inside Smith. He begins to cry, deep, shuddering sobs that echo through the cabin. I'm sorry, he whispers. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm not usually… I'm so sorry. Dr. Johnson watches this with a mixture of anger and pity. Captain, I believe you're sorry. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't protect the next young person who gets profiled on an aircraft. Chen closes his briefcase. The CEO will be here soon. Dr. Johnson, what outcome are you seeking? Dr. Johnson looks at his daughter, who nods slightly. Systemic change, he says simply. This can't happen again to anyone. The aircraft door opens, and James Morrison, CEO of the airline, strides down the aisle. He's a man in his 60s, silver-haired and imposing, but his face shows genuine distress. Behind him walk 2 other executives and a woman in a business suit carrying a large briefcase. Morrison stops in front of Dr. Johnson and extends his hand. Marcus, I'm deeply sorry about this situation. Dr. Johnson shakes his hand but doesn't smile. Jim, this is my daughter, Zara. Morrison turns to Zara with obvious respect. Ms. Johnson, on behalf of the entire airline, I want to apologize for the inexcusable treatment you received today. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Zara replies politely. Morrison's gaze shifts to Captain Smith, still sitting on the floor, and his expression hardens. Richard, stand up. Smith struggles to his feet, his uniform disheveled, his face streaked with tears. 15 years, Morrison says, his voice carrying across the cabin. 15 years of employment, and this is how you choose to represent our company? Sir, I made a mistake. You made a choice. Morrison cuts him off. A series of choices, each one worse than the last. The woman with the briefcase steps forward. I'm Sarah Williams, Director of Human Resources. Captain Smith, as of this moment, you are suspended without pay pending a full investigation. Karen Mitchell, who has been trying to make herself invisible, suddenly finds Morrison's attention on her. Ms. Mitchell, your comments were recorded as well. Seats for someone like you, I believe was the phrase. Karen's legs give out, and she collapses into an empty seat. Mr. Morrison, please, I have 3 kids at home. You should have thought about them before you decided to humiliate a teenage passenger. Morrison replies coldly. He turns to address the entire cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm James Morrison, CEO of this airline. What you witnessed today is completely contrary to our company values and policies. Captain Smith and Flight Attendant Mitchell are being removed from duty immediately. Spontaneous applause breaks out among the passengers. Dr. Johnson raises his hand for quiet. Jim, immediate action is appreciated, but what about long-term change? Morrison nods to the woman with the briefcase, who opens it to reveal documents. Marcus, we've been working on this during the flight here. Effective immediately, we're implementing the Johnson Protocol. The Johnson Protocol? Dr. Johnson asks. Named after your daughter. Morrison explains. Mandatory bias training for all employees, a passenger advocate program, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Any employee who profiles a passenger based on race, age, or appearance will be immediately terminated. Chen looks impressed, despite himself. That's a comprehensive response. It's a start. Morrison says. But there's more. He turns to Zara. Ms. Johnson, we'd like to offer you a position on our Customer Experience Advisory Board. Help us make sure this never happens again. Zara looks at her father, who nods encouragingly. I'd be honored, Mr. Morrison. Smith speaks up from where he's slumped against the wall. What about me? I have a mortgage, kids in college. Morrison's expression doesn't soften. Richard, you humiliated a teenage passenger, called security on her for sitting in a seat she paid for, and refused to listen when multiple people told you that you were wrong. What exactly did you think would happen? Judge Patterson speaks from her seat. Young man, actions have consequences. That's how the world works. Karen tries one more time. Please, Mr. Morrison, I'll do anything. Sensitivity training, community service. Ms. Mitchell, Morrison replies. You suggested that a brilliant young scientist didn't belong in first class because of how she looked. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Officer Williams, who has been watching quietly, steps forward. Mr. Morrison, what about the investigation? There could be federal charges here. Morrison looks at Dr. Johnson. Marcus, that's your call. Dr. Johnson considers this carefully. I want them to face consequences, but I also want this to be a teaching moment. Criminal charges might just make them victims in their own minds. He turns to Smith and Mitchell. I want you both to undergo 6 months of sensitivity training at your own expense. I want you to volunteer with organizations that fight discrimination. And I want you to personally apologize to every passenger on this flight. Smith nods eagerly. Yes, sir. Anything. Furthermore, Dr. Johnson continues, you'll participate in the airline's new training program. You'll help teach other employees how not to make the mistakes you made today. Morrison looks surprised. Marcus, you're being more generous than they deserve. Maybe, Dr. Johnson says, but change happens when people learn, not when they're just punished. Chen makes notes on his tablet. I'll draw up the agreements. This is all contingent on their full cooperation and completion of the program. Zara speaks up. And if they fail to complete it? Morrison's smile is sharp. Then they face the full legal consequences, criminal charges, civil suits, the works. Smith and Mitchell both nod frantically. The CEO turns to the passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, this flight will be delayed while we sort out crew replacement. Every passenger will receive a full refund plus travel vouchers as our apology for this incident. More applause fills the cabin. Dr. Johnson puts his arm around his daughter. Zara, are you ready to continue to Houston? She nods, then looks at Smith one more time. Captain Smith, I hope you learn from this. Your daughters deserve a father who treats all people with respect. Smith breaks down again, but this time there's something different in his tears. Something that might be understanding. 6 months later, Zara Johnson stands at the podium in the NASA headquarters auditorium, addressing an audience of scientists, engineers, and space industry leaders. The NASA Youth Summit has evolved into something much larger, a national symposium on equality in STEM fields. When I boarded Flight 447 6 months ago, she begins, her voice carrying the same calm confidence it held that day, I thought I was just traveling to a science competition. I had no idea I was about to become part of a much larger conversation. In the audience, her father beams with pride. Beside him sits James Morrison, who has become an unlikely ally in the fight for equal treatment in travel. Eleanor Patterson, the retired judge, occupies a front row seat, her knitting needles clicking softly as she listens. The Johnson Protocol has now been adopted by 12 major airlines. Zara continues, but more importantly, it started conversations in boardrooms, classrooms, and dinner tables across the country. The screen behind her shows statistics. Bias incident reports down 60% across participating airlines, customer satisfaction scores at all-time highs, employee satisfaction improved as workplace culture shifted. We've established the Equal Access Foundation, Zara announces, which has provided STEM scholarships to over 500 students from underrepresented communities. Next year, that number will double. The audience applauds, but Zara raises her hand for quiet. But the most important change isn't measured in statistics. It's measured in moments. Moments when someone thinks twice before making assumptions. Moments when a young person sees possibility instead of barriers. She pauses, her eyes finding her father in the audience. My father taught me that the universe is vast enough for everyone's dreams, but sometimes we have to help others see that vastness. In the back of the auditorium, a figure raises his hand. It's Richard Smith, wearing a volunteer badge from the Civil Rights Museum, where he now works part-time. Morrison arranged for him to attend, part of his ongoing education program. Ms. Johnson, he says, his voice shaky but determined. I was the captain on Flight 447. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to learn and grow instead of just being punished. The auditorium falls silent. Zara nods respectfully. Thank you for doing the work, Captain Smith. Real change requires everyone to participate. Morrison leans over to Dr. Johnson. Your daughter is remarkable, Marcus. She gets that from her mother. Dr. Johnson replies with a smile. On stage, Zara reveals her next announcement. In 3 months, I'll be joining NASA's first integrated Mars simulation crew. At 18, I'll be the youngest mission specialist ever selected for the program. The applause is thunderous, but Zara isn't finished. But I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you because 6 months ago, someone tried to tell me I didn't belong in a first-class seat. Today, I'm preparing to help humanity reach another planet. She looks directly into the camera that's broadcasting the event live. To every young person watching this, especially those who've been told they don't belong somewhere, the universe is waiting for you. Your dreams are valid. Your contributions matter. The screen behind her shows images from the Mars simulation facility, where a diverse team of young scientists prepares for humanity's next great leap. The next time someone questions whether you belong somewhere, remember this. Belonging isn't determined by others' expectations. It's determined by your courage to claim your place and your commitment to lifting others as you climb. Eleanor Patterson wipes tears from her eyes. Around the auditorium, audience members nod, some wiping their own tears. The Equal Access Foundation isn't just about space or aviation. Zara concludes. It's about creating a world where a young person's potential isn't limited by other people's prejudices, where first-class dreams are available to first-class minds, regardless of what package they come in. As she steps down from the podium, the standing ovation lasts for several minutes. In the crowd, Smith approaches Dr. Johnson. "Sir," he says quietly, "I know I can never fully make up for what I did, but I want you to know that your daughter changed my life. My own daughters are different people because of what I learned." Dr. Johnson shakes his hand. "Richard, that's what real change looks like. Not just policy changes, but heart changes." Later, as the event concludes, Zara finds herself surrounded by young people, all eager to share their own stories of discrimination and dreams of overcoming it. A young Latina girl approaches shyly. "Ms. Johnson, what if people keep telling you that you don't belong?" Zara kneels down to the girl's eye level. "Then you keep proving them wrong, one achievement at a time. And you remember that for every person who tries to limit you, there are others ready to lift you up." She points to the crowd around them. "Look at all these people here tonight. They're here because they believe in your potential, even if some others don't." The girl smiles, her eyes bright with new possibility. As the evening winds down, Dr. Johnson and Zara walk toward the exit together. "Dad," she says, "do you think what happened on that plane was worth it?" Dr. Johnson considers the question. "Sweetheart, I wish it had never happened to you, but I'm proud of how you turned it into something positive. You didn't just overcome discrimination, you used it as fuel to lift others. The universe is vast enough for everyone." Zara repeats his favorite phrase. "Yes," he agrees, "but sometimes we have to be the ones to show people how to see that vastness." As Zara's story spreads across social media and news platforms, it becomes more than just an airline incident. It becomes a catalyst for change. The hashtag Belonging Matters trends worldwide, with millions sharing their own stories of discrimination and triumph. But here's what the news reports don't tell you. Zara's journey to NASA, her father's quiet dignity, and the systemic changes they inspired, all of this started with one moment of choice. Not Zara's choice to sit in first class, not Dr. Johnson's choice to demand justice, but the choice that each of us makes every single day when we encounter someone different from ourselves. Do we see potential or make assumptions? Do we open doors or create barriers? Do we lift up or tear down? The Johnson Protocol isn't just an airline policy. It's a challenge to every person who witnesses injustice, every teacher who sees a struggling student, every manager who reviews a diverse resume, every neighbor who meets someone new. The protocol asks one simple question. What would the world look like if we treated everyone with the same respect we'd want for our own children? Today, as you go about your daily life, you'll encounter people who look different from you, sound different from you, dream different dreams than you. Some will be young, like Zara was. Some will be older, carrying decades of dreams deferred. Some will be sitting in places where others think they don't belong. Your response in those moments, whether you choose to be Captain Smith or Dr. Johnson, whether you choose to question or to support, whether you choose to judge or to advocate, that response doesn't just affect them, it shapes the kind of world we're building together. Zara Johnson is preparing for Mars because someone believed in her potential before it was proven, because her father fought for her right to occupy space, literally and figuratively, because Judge Patterson spoke up when she saw injustice, because even CEO Morrison chose to be part of the solution rather than just managing the problem. The next Mars mission will launch in 24 months. Zara will be on it, carrying not just scientific equipment, but the dreams of every young person who's been told they don't belong somewhere. She'll be carrying the legacy of that day on Flight 447, when injustice tried to ground her dreams, but instead gave them wings. But Mars is just the beginning. The real frontier isn't space. It's the space we create for each other here on Earth. The question isn't whether we can reach other planets. The question is whether we can reach each other. Your moment is coming. Maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, but it's coming. Someone will need an advocate. Someone will need a voice. Someone will need you to choose justice over comfort, courage over convenience. When that moment comes, will you be ready? Will you be someone's Dr. Johnson? Will you help someone claim their rightful place in first class, in the boardroom, in the laboratory, in the cockpit that might one day take us to Mars? The universe is vast enough for everyone's dreams. The only question is whether we're brave enough to help each other see that vastness. The choice, as always, is yours.